Calgary's quietest streets still echo. The city's deadliest feud, FOB versus FK, left more than 24 people dead, with bullets sprayed in restaurants and in daylight intersections. The official record says police broke the back of that war. The street belief is simpler and colder. It only changed shape. 5 names still cast long shadows over Calgary's underworld. FOB, FK, the Hells Angels in Calgary, and 2 BC exports whose reach has brushed the city, the United Nations Gang and the Brothers Keepers. This is a verdict first, receipts after. We'll walk the rivalries, the big set pieces, and the fallout that still pushes investigators toward long, patient takedowns. We track this story through the rivalry spine, FOB against FK, and the outside pressure that kept fanning it. BC, supply lines, and biker muscle. We weigh official records, court files, and police briefings against what underworld watchers whispered in hallways and back booths. Names are kept consistent. Sensitive claims are attributed. Publication bans are respected. The goal is clarity without theater. FOB, fresh off the boat, began as a Calgary street crew with Lower Mainland ties, then hardened into a disciplined, violent outfit in the 2000s boom. Prosecutors and police portrayed FOB's calling cards as targeted kidnaps, ambush meetings, and audacity in public spaces. The most infamous example happened on New Year's Day 2009 at a Southeast Vietnamese restaurant called Bolsa. Remember the pattern: a kidnapped lure, arrival at lunch, innocent people nearby, and gunmen who didn't blink. Court records tie core players to first-degree murder convictions connected to Bolsa. For years on the street, the belief was that FOB prospered because it tapped BC pipelines faster than rivals, cheaper, purer, steadier. The legal record offers a plainer story: motive, planning, execution, and convictions. Across the chessboard stood FK, the fresh off-the-boat killers. The splinter became nemesis. In Calgary, police briefings consistently paired FK with FOB as the axis of harm. In BC, reporters and investigators described FK names surfacing near the United Nations Gang's orbit during the late 2000s and early 2010s. That proximity is described in reporting and police evidence from that era, not as settled fact, but as the pattern detectives believed they were seeing. Inside Calgary, FK's presence as target and accused pushed the police service to build new structures just to keep pace. In this narrative, FK is the foil that made FOB sharper. Their contest forced investigators to evolve. If you want more slow, sourced breakdowns of how Canadian cities deal with gang violence, you can subscribe and stick around for the next city. Let's continue. The setting matters. Calgary's geography invites movement. Deerfoot Trail feeds the airport and warehouses. Highway 2 pulls north toward Edmonton. Highway 1 runs west across the Rockies toward the Lower Mainland. Alberta's money surged. The market did too. Prosecutors later said the feud was fueled by cash and by associations outside Alberta, especially links to BC groups for product and guns. In response, the city shifted from reactive posture to structure, a centrally coordinated hub to track gang files citywide, and a habit of building slow, layered cases. In BC, the United Nations Gang under Clay Ruesch fought its own wars against rivals like the Red Scorpions. Police evidence from that era described UN command and control, supply chains, and hired teams. Reporting later tied FK names to the UN's proximity. Again, a reported pattern rather than a settled fact. What matters for Calgary is the pressure vector. When Lower Mainland wars ran hot, Calgary felt the draft. New enemies, new rules, and new guns. The feud's center of gravity was in Calgary, but the weather system often formed over the Fraser River. Now to the first set piece that rewired the city's tolerance. New Year's Day, 2009. South Calgary, lunch rush. Families are dining at Bolsa when 3 masked men arrive. The night before, a man named Aaron Bendel was kidnapped. He becomes bait to draw Sanjeev Maan, a figure aligned with FK, into the open. 2 gunmen move to the back table. Shots crack across bowls and teacups. Maan goes down despite a vest. Bendel is executed in the chaos. A 3rd shooter covers the exit. Kenny Sua, a 43-year-old regular just trying to get out, is cut down in the parking lot. The killers scatter into daylight traffic. Calgary had seen public shootings, but Bolsa felt different. A bystander dead, a full restaurant traumatized. In court, prosecutors rolled out a classic undercover play, cell tower records, and cooperating witnesses. Over years, trials and appeals stacked up. Nathan Zuccarado and Michael Roberto were convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder. Rio Honorio received life for his role and later apologized to Sua's family at sentencing. Those courtroom outcomes became a pivot. Calgary's decade-long feud finally met legal gravity. Police went on to group and explain a set of organized crime-related homicides to show where the violence clustered, and to warn relatives and hangers-on that proximity could be fatal. The message, patience and public resolve could break the cycle. There was another board in the background, bikes and patches. Calgary's biker presence has been cyclical but visible. Hells Angels supporters and patched members pass through, recruit, and rally. In July 2025, the Calgary Police Service issued an unusually public heads-up. Expect an influx of outlaw bikers in the city for the weekend, with extra enforcement on licensing, traffic, and liquor rules. Afterward, police said they removed hundreds of Hells Angels from establishments, lawful line holding as a show of force. The official line was clear: gatherings aren't illegal. Intimidation and organized crime activity are. On the street, the red was simpler, a test of Calgary's posture in a noisy year for BC gang turbulence. None of this erases the FK FOB history. It shows the wider chessboard: bikers watching markets, street groups watching bikers, and police drawing bright public lines before the weekend even starts. A second set piece shows how the Lower Mainland's wars keep brushing Calgary. Bankview, a neighborhood southwest of downtown. Late afternoon, May 22nd, 2021. A parked car, a tight angle, then shots. Police called it a targeted fatal shooting behind 26th Avenue Southwest. The victim, a man from British Columbia, was linked by media sources to the ongoing Lower Mainland gang war. Days earlier, his brother had been killed outside a Burnaby restaurant. Witnesses in Bankview heard bursts and saw a vehicle tearing away. The tape went up. Homicide took the lead. Calgary became another pin on a map of BC vendettas. 3 years later, police renewed their call for information on a blue Subaru believed to be the getaway car. That detail underscores how cross-border rivalries can stall in local courts without witnesses or new digital leads. The lesson echoes the 2000s. When alliances shift in BC, Calgary's risk picture can change in a single afternoon. Retaliation here rarely used theater, but patterns emerged: daylight ambushes, burned vehicles after the hit, and lures that pulled targets into public spaces. Police and Crown prosecutors call it targeted violence, not random. On the street, it reads like a ledger: debts cleared where everyone can see. Bolsa proved how one attack can change public tolerance. Bankview showed that new enemies inherit the old stage. The biker advisories speak a different language of power: presence. In a city built on mobility, Deerfoot, McLeod, the Trans-Canada, messages travel fast. The record is careful, and so are we. What's proven is in court. What's alleged is flagged by attribution to investigators and reporters. On paper, Bolsa anchored the FOB side of the ledger: guilty verdicts, life sentences, a public rebuke from the bench, and a moment of remorse in open court. Other files continued: charges in earlier double homicides, appeals and retrials, and long-running conspiracy probes. In 2013, Calgary police grouped several organized crime-related homicides to show the city where violence had clustered and to warn that standing too close could be fatal. That message outlived the feud. The legal map since has been a mosaic. Some convictions, some charges stayed or resolved, some investigations still open. Calgary learned the slow math of major cases: patient undercover work, digital forensics, tight disclosure, and the limits of rumor when it faces a judge. To keep pace, Calgary built infrastructure. The Organized Crime Operations Center centralizes gang investigations across districts, with analysts sitting beside surveillance teams to prioritize targets across the city. Provincially, Alert Calgary handles complex, cross-border investigations. In 2025, a 2-year probe called Project Cerberus, led by Alert Calgary with the Calgary Police Service, the RCMP, and the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, seized exceptionally pure cocaine and dismantled what investigators described as a transnational trafficking network. At the same time, the police service's 2024 numbers showed shootings trending down even as the number of crime guns seized rose. That divergence suggests enforcement heat, even as incidents dip. It's the new posture: build bigger cases, seize bigger loads, and starve the marketplace. After the headlines fade, families rebuild in the shadows. Years after Bolsa, Ray Lenorio apologized in court to Kani Sua's loved ones. It didn't fix anything. Nothing could. But it marked a human beat inside a case remembered for cold efficiency. On the street, veterans learned to move quieter or moved away. New players took old routes. Calgary's lesson is not nostalgia for the bad old days. It's capacity to prevent, to prosecute, and to remember who was never in the game and died anyway. As of 2025, the numbers say shootings fell in 2024, and police seized more crime guns. The biker summer drew headlines but stayed inside the law. The Bankview case still asks for the right tip. FOB and FK are names from a previous decade, but their methods, public audacity and cross-provincial leverage, still shape the rules. The verdict we opened with stands. In Calgary, the feud ended on paper and evolved in practice. The city's job is to keep outgrowing it. So when people ask about the 5 most ruthless outfits that shaped Calgary's modern gang story, the framing is this: FOB, whose public audacity culminated at Bolsa and ended with hard convictions. FK, the foil that forced everyone to evolve, and, according to investigators and reporters in BC, often moved near the United Nations gang's orbit. The Hells Angels in Calgary, whose large-scale gathering in 2025 drew an assertive police posture and a visible show of the state's boundaries. The United Nations gang, a BC power whose supply and oversight vector has, according to police evidence and reporting from that period, brushed Calgary in ways that mattered. And the Brothers Keepers, another Lower Mainland crew whose conflict spilled across provincial lines, touching Calgary through that 2021 targeted shooting. The names matter less than the civic memory. Calgary has learned to treat gang violence as a moving current that changes route, but keeps its pull. The city can't afford theater. It needs method, good files, careful attribution, and a willingness to build long cases. It needs public patience too, because the most important wins don't always look like a scene. Sometimes they look like quieter streets and a single phone call about a blue Subaru that finally reaches the right detective. That's the part that never makes the headline real. Neighbors who stop normalizing late-night gunfire, bar staff who remember a face, families who refuse to let a victim be reduced to a statistic. Calgary's gang story isn't just written by crews and case files. It's written by juries, school halls, and people who decide they've seen enough. If the city keeps its nerve, the next chapter doesn't belong to the most ruthless. It belongs to everyone else. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to Canadian Crime Files for more documentaries.